We're learning Hilchos Chanukah Perek Yud Gimel, Halacha Yud Gimel. The Rambam begins. V'chein kishakoyre magi l'rosh kol perek v'perek. When the reader of the Hallel comes to the head of it, at the beginning of every perek, hein choizim v'omer masha oma. They repeat what he says. Ketzad. So let's go down below. So we'll learn below. When he gets to every perek, hein choizim v'omer masha oma. They repeat what he said. For example, Ketzad. Kishuayim b'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, Kolam Chayim b'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim. V'akir Beis Yaakov Yam Loyes, V'cholam Oinen Hallelujah. But at the beginning of the perek, when he says b'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, they also answer b'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim. The rest of the time they answer Hallelujah. So I'd have to count to see if we come to 123, which we learned yesterday, is the number of times he said Hallelujah. And then they say again, that means that whatever he reads, they continue and say Hallelujah in the rest of it. And then they answer Hallelujah. So we finished Halacha Yudalet. Now we'll go to the next page and begin Halacha Yud Gimel, and we'll start Halacha Yudalet. In Perek Gimel Halacha Yudalet, the Rambam says, "Hakoyre ima ona Hashem Oshiano, v'hein onim achov ona Hashem Oshiano." And let's go down and see what it says in the Peirush. Aval pisha einay rosh perek, even though it's not a rosh perek. Hu ima ona Hashem atzlichano. He says ona Hashem atzlichano, and they answer after him. Which is the next few doubled up psukim, and everybody says Baruch Habo. The Maggid Mishnah cites this as the source is in Sukkah 38b. It's a mitzvah to say the Rosh Prokim, meaning Hallelujah you say in all the other psukim, but on the Rosh Prokim you say the words again. And so it seems there. It says, Ona Hashem Mashiach, Ona Hashem Atzlichno, and everything is explained over there. The Lechem Mishnah questions, why doesn't the Rambam explain that you say Hoidu and they say Hoidu, like we do? And he explains that Rav says, like the Minig Chodesh, that after the Minig Arishon there was another Minig, and therefore Rav came to tell us Hoidu and Hoidu. To tell us it's a mitzvah to answer Hoidu, because the minig ha'achroin, according to the last minig, they didn't answer the Rosh Prokim like the minig Rishon. In order that we shouldn't forget the first minig, they made a heket about Hoidu. They say Hoidu again. Minig Rishon, they didn't have to tell them that because they did have sukkahs at the beginning of every Rosh Prokim, and therefore it was different. Thus, the Rambam is according to the Minig Rishon, and he doesn't mention the Rava that he says the Minig Achrein of Hoidu. And Lechem Mishnah continues or concludes that the other things that are mentioned in the Gemara come to teach us certain laws. The Rambam is of the opinion that even the Minig Rishon, they also did that, because we learn laws from there, and we need those halachas for our times as well. The Lechem Mishnah's text of the Rambam was, he says Baruch Habo, and they say Baruch Habo. And he asks, in the Gemara, it says they answer V'Shem Hashem. And from here, we have the din of Shemei Koina, because they didn't say the word Baruch Habo. All they say is V'Shem Hashem, so they're saying half of Bosik. But when they say V'Shem Hashem, they have Miyoitza with Shemei Koina from the first half where it says Baruch Habo. And Rashi there explains Baruch Habo, they relied on the reader and they heard his words, and it's as if they said it, and they don't have to answer those words themselves, and not Hallelujah. From here we learn that somebody who doesn't know how to read or to say any tefillah If he's shomeya, if he listens, it's like he said it himself. But according to the Rambam, that the tzibur says Baruch Habo, we don't learn this din, and his words would seem to be the opposite from the Gemara. And he concludes, so we need understanding exactly what the Rambam's text is. Text, according to the Lechem Mishnah's text in the Rambam, what the Rambam meant. But our text, or the one that Frankel has, is when he says Kishoim Baruch Habo, everyone answers B'Shem Hashem, like in the Gemara, so there's no question the Kush is Halechem Mishnah. Thus, since they were Yoitzu with the Baruch Haba from the Bakayra, we have the law that is Shemea Koina. But according to the text of the Lechem Mishnah, that he says Baruch Haba and they say Baruch Haba, he had a problem with the text. Now, the Rambam continues in his text, that they cannot fulfill the obligations of others by reading it. The person should state after them, he should say every word in the entire Hallel. Now, in the beginning of Halacha Yud Beis, he says, the Mevorach is HaGadol, and we mentioned this when we were learning it. Simply put, usually the words HaGadol means the person leading the services was the Shliach Tzibur. But from here, it would seem proof, as we mentioned also in Yud Beis, that when he's talking about Gadol, he means somebody who's chayiv b'mitzvahs, and not a cotton. And now we'll go to the next page. Now the Rambam says, this is the minig arishon. This is the kain roy leilech, and that's the way a person should proceed. But today, the Rambam states, I saw many places, different minhagim, and how you read it, and how the people answer, and one is not similar to the other. Oi, Isha. Now, a woman cannot lead the Hallel, fulfill your obligation. The Klechemda infers from here that women are potter from saying Hallel of Chanukah, because the mitzvahs say it's a positive commandment has man groma, even though it's Rabbanon. The rabbis never obligated women to do. When they enacted mitzvahs Rabbanon, it was according to the rules of mitzvahs deraisa. And further proof that Bahal, he didn't say Kol HaChayim B'Kriyas Megillah Chayim B'Halal Shel Chanukah. The same way he says by Mikra Megillah that women are Chayim, he doesn't say that by Halal. Thus we see that Noshim HaPaturus Mahalal Shel Chanukah. When he says cotton, Meiser Keach cites a Pri Chodesh, that even when he gets the chinuch, he can't be married to somebody else, even though he understands what he's doing, even though it's a Rabbanon. And in cotton's actions are also only Chayim Rabbanon. So why can't one Rabbanon, a person who's obligated with a Rabbanon, fulfill an adult's obligation with a Rabbanon? But the answer is, by him it's two Rabbonons. So Rambam says, I saw Minogim Mishunois, different Minogim, and how you read it, and what the people say, and one of them is not similar to the other. Now, at the beginning of Halacha Yud Beis, he says that Gadol fulfills the obligation of everyone. Taisus of the opinion that everybody says it together. Hakapois Tamorim asked the question, why didn't they understand the Gemara like the Rambam, that the reader says it and everybody's yotzim fulfills their obligation with his brocha, and just like by Kriyas Halal? And he answers, if that was the case, they would have to learn the din of Shemeir Ko'ina Ma'abrocha, that it's one who's making the brocha would be fulfilling their obligations, not from Baruch Habo. Why do they go to the end of Hallel of Baruch Habo to prove that Shemeir Ko'ina, if the only one making the brocha is the Shliach Tzibur? And he asks a question on the Rambam, who says that in the Baruch he fulfills everybody's obligation, and the Aruch LaNer says you can't learn from the brocha that Shemeir Ko'ina. Why? Because you see Omein, and the Omein is what causes it to become a brocha. So he wants to differentiate. When you're listening to something which is being stated and you don't say Amen, then if you yoitz it, you can only learn from Baruch Habo when the other ones say B'Shem Hashem. But the Baruch, when you answer Amen, that's like stating the Baruch. But Tosis doesn't state that you answer Amen, because the main intent is to explain that they should make the Baruch immediately, and there should be no separation between their Baruch to Hallel, which the Baal Tefillah would be saying to be moitzim. So according to Tosis, the Baal Tefillah said, the Shliach Tzibor said the bracha, and then they said a bracha, and then they continued on by saying Halacha at the beginning of the paragraph, and then Halacha. The Rambam learns, you say Halacha on every sentence, even though you say the beginning of the paragraph. Tosis learn that the Makra says Beis Yaakov me'am loyes, and they answer if it says Yisrael Mitzrayim, and only in the Perek Rishon they answered Halacha. In other words, that, and the Kapis T'morim and the Machon Nesher ask from Masechet Seifrim and from Medrash Tehillim, the Yerushalmi, he say Halacha 123 times. And now, according to Tosis, if you only answer on the first Perek, you don't have 123 times for sure. The Machon Nesher wants to explain that Tosis are of the opinion that the Bavli disagrees, and so it would seem from Masechet Seifrim. Now, Halacha Yud Aleph, it says, there are places that they say Oitcha Yanisoni twice until the end of Hallel. Rambam himself in Peirush HaMeir explains you should double up from Oitcha Yanisoni till the end of Hallel, every word twice. That, according to the Machon Nesher, this is what he means Koifel Kol Dovo. He doesn't mean every piece, but he means every word. And he brings from Brochus 33b. And somebody says Moedim Moedim. We find by Moedim Machon Nesher, the person says it twice Moedim. We tell him, we hush him up. Why? Whoever says Shema Shema is like he says Moedim Moedim, because it sounds like he's talking to two entities. That's a shalom. You get more questions. When you say Shema and you say it twice, it's Meguna. It says it's not appropriate, but it doesn't say that we hush him. The Gemara answers that it depends whether he says Shema Shema Yisrael Yisrael, or whether he says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Then he says again Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. I'm going to turn the page. Rashi in Brochus explains when he returns on each wording. Rashi explains that when he repeats each word, that's not a correct way of speaking, and you don't. That's not a correct way, but you don't hush him. But if he says he repeats the whole pasuk, you do hush him. Tosis, Rabbeinu Hanan, the Rambam, tells Kriya Shema, explain the exact opposite. The one who says a pasuk and repeats it, that's what's not correct. And he says each word, then you hush him up. Therefore, in Hallel, they were enacted that one should double up. Rashi's of the opinion that you have to double up all the psukim. Like all of the Hallel, the psukim are doubled. According to him, when you double up psukim, you say you hush him. And therefore, if you don't hush him here, we see that he does it because of the minik. But if we'll say each word doubled, you can tell that his intent is to double it up. And according to Rashi, it is considered not correct, but you don't have to hush him elsewhere. But the Rambam explains that the reason for doubling it up, the Psukim of Hallel, like the Rashba, because David and Yishai and Shmuel said it, as we brought down before, and therefore we double it up. And since Rabbeinu Hanan is the opinion that if you say each word twice, you tell him to be quiet, and since you also have Rabbeinu Hanan, that if somebody says something twice, you tell them you hush him up. Therefore, by Hallel, where they said you should double it up, it will only double up the pasuk. You won't be able to tell that the minig is to double. It looks like somebody's doing something wrong. Therefore, he explains. You say each word twice, and if you don't tell them to be quiet, that's it's visible. That's the minhag. The Torah cites, and the Shliach Tzibur says hoidu, and Kal say afterwards hoidu. Shliach Tzibur says Yemana Yisrael Gidon Chazdoi, and the Kal say afterwards hoidu Lashem Gidon Chazdoi. Shliach Tzibur says Yemana Beis Aaron, and the Kal say afterwards hoidu, and the same thing further hoidu. Now the last hoidu would seem to be, as we said before, the beginning of Min HaMeitzah Korosi Ko. So that technically would seem that the last hoidu the Shliach Tzibur should say also, although it's not written in the Siddur. Rabbi Yosef says that's a minig. That's our minig. In Perek Lulav HaGozel, it's brought down a different minig, and the Ran writes there that we're not noyeg like that minig. Where you go, there's a minig. You go according to the minig. If there's no minig, then you don't do that minig. Now the Beis Yosef adds, what is the Torah writes? Shliach Tzibur says hoidu, and the Kal say after him hoidu is brought down in the Gemara that the reader says hoidu Lashem, and they say hoidu Lashem. Therefore, the mitzvah is to answer to say the beginning, because originally they did it for people who weren't able to read. Therefore, every word that the person who read it said, they would say it again. Today, everybody knows how to read. We don't need that, but we kept a minig, so we shouldn't forget the first takona of repeating, and that's why certain things are repeated. The Mishnah Berurah cites that the Mogen Avram, the Yor Rabbo, even though that you say Yemeno Yisrael, Yemeno Beis Ham, Yemeno Hashem, they could be Yoitze with what they hear from the Shliach Tzibur, because the Shemei Koina is better that a person should say it himself softly, because he's not Machavan. And he says today they know you like that. That people say, they say Yemeno Hashem, they say both. The Torah brings a minig. Everybody says from Min HaMeitzah till Oidcha Giani Soni together, and only from Oidcha Giani Soni you double up the psukim. That's what we do. And then when the Shliach Tzibur gets to Ona Hashem Mashiach No, the Kal says Ona Hashem Mashiach No. Also Ona Hashem Atzlicha No, the congregation says Ona Hashem Atzlicha No. Now, in Sfard, Nusach Sfard, they do not double up Baruch Habo and Keil Hashem V'Yoel Lonu. But Keliyat Hoidecha and Hoidu, they do double up. And Ashkenaz, all four psukim are doubled up. The Beis Yosef explains the meaning of Sfard. Sheborach Habo v'Keil Hashem v'Yoel Lonu, you don't have to double up, because they actually are duplications of Borach Habo b'Shem Hashem and B'Yach Nochem Beis Hashem. And in Keneged Keil Hashem v'Yoel Lonu, he says, that's through the korbanos which are brought on the mizbeach. Hashem me'elonu. This is a very good. We're ending Chanukah right. This parak of Chanukah right before Chanukah. But this is the source for Keil Hashem ve'elonu. However, Keil Hashem, Keliyat v'ideka, Void Hashem, you have to double up. On these two psukim, koiful boidvorim. The Chidor points out. The Beis Yosef doesn't bring from the Avudraham, who says in the name of Ritz Ben Geyes, and Sefer HaMinig, that he proves that you have to double up only Hatzlicha No. The Sefer HaMinig, that's Minig Sfard. The Chidor points out that that's the Minig of Sfard, Yerushalayim and Hebron, that they don't double up any psukim after Ona Hashem Hatzlicha No. The Torah concludes. There are other different minhagim, many different places. The main thing is how you read it is according to the minig. Therefore, every place should do according to its minig. The Prisha cites Shvidei Aleket, the name of the Goinim. The reason why we read Halal Rosh Chodesh, because it says in Tillim in 150, Halu Keil B'Kodshoy. There's 12 times that it says Hallelu. This has to do This has to do with the 12 Rosh Chodesh at the beginning of every month when we say Hallel. And therefore we double up Kol Anshomat Hallel Kol for the 13th time when this year, coming year, is going to be a Shona Mu'beres. And from Perek Kuf Nun, they were masakin the minig to say Hallel and Rosh Chodesh. And Baruch Hashem, we have completed the first Perek of Chanukah, and Miz Hashem will start the second Perek.